look what we have here. Finally, after much delay and teasing, the Volkswagen ID.Buzz has arrived, the rebirth of the bus. And yes, Volkswagen calls this a bus. It even says so on their website, but the EPA and I agree it's really a minivan. An all-electric minivan, but still a minivan. But regardless of titles, I finally get to drive it. And not only that, I'm gonna have it for 2 weeks over the holiday season. And as you can see by the salt on the ground and the salt on the bus and some salt on me, it's winter. So I'm also gonna get to be one of the first to do a proper cold weather test. So before we hit the road, let's quickly go over the exterior of the new Buzz. It really does look like a modern take on the classic Volkswagen Type 2 or Samba bus or micro bus or whatever you want to call it. I've even had non-car people comment on that, how it looks like the old Volkswagen, but modern. They've done their best job to try to give it a flat nose, but it can't be completely flat like the old model due to crash regulations and safety standards. But still, playing with this giant front windshield that sits way up on the dash and just the way the nose is overall done, it definitely gives a look of what it's supposed to be, and that's the old bus. You can start to count how many times I say bus in this video. Of course, what micro bus, Samba bus Type 2 would be complete without a giant Volkswagen logo on the front? And unlike the chrome ones that came on the original vehicles, this one is plastic, but it lights up at night, and that looks really cool. And there's a light bar that goes across like all modern Volkswagens, and it has the ID lights here. If you look at it from the side, you can see it has a massive wheelbase, over 127 inches long, which is several inches longer than a Chevrolet Tahoe. But when it comes to overall length, it's quite a few inches shorter than an Atlas. So it has a very sort of stretched out to the corners wheelbase, which I'll get to later. But height-wise, it is very tall, and you sit very high in the vehicle. It's a very commanding view, and you see over a lot of other SUVs' roofs, but some passengers have maybe given it not the best compliment and saying they feel like they're driving in a modern cargo van. And I mean, if you look at sort of the front section, it's a very similar shape. But back to the actual vehicle. This is the first edition because that's all that's on sale right now in either all-wheel drive, which they call 4Motion, or rear-wheel drive. And you get the first edition badges back here. And it comes with these cool 20-inch wheels that Volkswagen calls disc wheels, and they're clearly retro-inspired. And I can't wait to see some people take these off buses and put them on other products down the road. But for now, it looks fantastic on the vehicle. Flipping the vehicle around, it's once again a mix of classic and new design. There is the light bar that runs across the entire rear hatch, which has become sort of a Volkswagen trademark lately. There's this cool integrated spoiler, and of course there's a giant VW badge, and it says ID.Buzz in big letters in case anyone mistakes what this giant bus is rolling down the road. So as I've mentioned before, this is the first edition of the Buzz, which means a special exclusive version to start the model off. And it has those 20-inch disc wheels and that first edition badging I showed. It comes standard with the electrochromatic glass roof, although in Canada that's still a extra cost option. It has the Harman Kardon 14-speaker audio system, 360-degree cameras, the easy open power sliding doors and rear lift gate. There's this flexible storage bin, captain's chairs in the 4Motion, which I have, and the Heritage Premium floor mats, which is super important. So the Buzz can come as a 6 or 7 seater, and when you have the captain's chairs like I do, obviously it's a 6-seater because the third row only seats 2 people. But that isn't a reflection on the amount of space in here. This could possibly be the biggest, most spacious 3-row anything on the market right now. So in the front row, I have 42 inches of headroom and 37.5 inches of legroom, and that number is kind of deceiving as I have all the legroom I possibly need. Then you go to the middle row and things actually increase as there's now 42.3 inches of headroom and almost 40 inches of legroom. So then you go to the third row and things now have to get much smaller, right? Well, headroom does shrink to 38.7 inches, but there's 42.4 inches of legroom. That's ridiculous. I can sit in the third row without issue. In fact, I can sit in any of the rows. This is a true 6-adult vehicle. And all the space isn't just taken up by people. There's a lot of cargo here. I mean, 18.6 cubic feet behind the third row may not sound like a lot, but that's better than a lot of SUVs, maybe not quite as good as minivans. Now this one does have the extra sort of cargo floor that will make everything flat when you fold the third and second row. And when you fold those rows, you go up to 75.5 cubic feet behind the second row. And if you fold the second row, you now have 145.5 cubic feet. That just shows how big this vehicle is with its width and height. And most EVs kind of lose some of the floor space due to the battery, but that's not the case here. Volkswagen just kept building it up higher, and 145 cubic feet plus, that's a lot you can carry. But if you do have 6 adults and you want to tow, well, it can tow 3,500 pounds as well. So what else do I have in here? Well, these are leatherette seatings, and in the front they're heated and ventilated, and in the second row they're heated. They're power operated in the front. I have a 14-way adjustable, and there's a massage feature, which is great. The captain's chairs don't have the power or the ventilation or the massage though, but they're still good enough. There's 4-zone climate control in this vehicle. I got 2 up front and 2 in the middle row. There's a 12.9-inch touchscreen here, which is the usual Volkswagen system, which is good and bad. I mean, the actual software is nice and it's pretty quick to react, but again, no buttons. That means volume slider that has the temperature control sliders. I just want a couple buttons, like maybe give me a volume knob and a couple temperature control switches, dials, knobs. I don't care, just a couple. And then in front of the driver, there is a 5.3-inch digital display screen. It can be customized a bit and has all the necessary information, but the first edition also includes the head-up display, like I mentioned, and that is actually quite large, and it's cool because it can go between regular head-up display coloring, or you can do snow mode that turns the speed a light blue color, so you can differentiate it between it and maybe a snowy road in front of you. And that just shows that this ID.Buzz was meant for more than just warm weather driving. A couple other quick call-outs before we get on the road. There's the removable Volkswagen Buzz box in the middle here that allows front and middle row passengers access, and you can just take it out altogether if you want. There's wireless charging, wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, all the usual safety systems, you know, everything you expect in a modern car, especially one that costs this much. And we'll get to price a little bit later, because I want to just go through the vehicle first so you know what it's like, and then you can decide if it's worth the price. So the first thing you notice when you get behind the wheel is the driving position is very unfamiliar to regular drivers. The front windshield, as I mentioned, is way up there, and there's a massive dash. You could like eat a meal on it or put your laptop there. There's just so much dash. Now, to help with sightlines, there's big side windows here that you'll actually use more than you think when turning or parking. It's just a little maybe disorientating for a couple minutes until you get used to it, but I would say within 10 minutes, didn't even notice anymore, and after 2 weeks of driving, it just seems second nature. In fact, I get in a regular car and I feel almost cramped in because there's just so much space here in the driver's seat. All 6 seats feel like front seats. After 2 hours on the road, when I had multiple passengers in the vehicle, none of us felt uncomfortable or fatigued. We all felt like we were just riding in a, ready for it, a bus. As I mentioned, this is not a minivan according to Volkswagen, but according to the rest of the world it is. So being one, or not being one, there's tons of storage. There's this removable Buzz box, there's shelves on the passenger side, there's flip down cup holders. It being an electric vehicle has flat floors, so that means you can put stuff all over the place between seats. It's just really nice and handy. There's no sort of compromise in this vehicle just because it has an electric powertrain. So yes, let's get to that powertrain. The Buzz is available in 2 configurations, rear-wheel drive or 4Motion all-wheel drive. So rear-wheel drive get a single motor that powers the rear wheels, and it makes 282 horsepower and 413 pound-feet of torque. All-wheel drive versions, like I'm in, don't really up the power too much. It goes up to 335 as there's now a motor up front, but although it makes its own torque, maximum torque remains at 413 pound-feet. Now that may not sound like a lot of power for a vehicle this size, and in the world of EVs, it is on the lower power side, which is crazy to say a minivan with over 400 pound-feet of torque might be underpowered. But in reality, it's not. This vehicle actually weighs just a bit over 6,000 pounds, which again is heavy in isolation, but compared to a lot of EVs, that's pretty good considering its size. And around town, there's all the power you'd ever need because that's just the nature of EVs. All that instant torque magnifies how much power there actually is in a vehicle at low speeds. I had 6 full-grown people in here, and I could still accelerate quicker than I had any business doing so. So you watch. Just fly away from the stop, and I'm already almost breaking the speed limit, so I gotta stop. But anyway, back to power and other situations. So the only time I really ever feel maybe a bit of lack of power is on the freeway, and even then it's at the upper allowable speeds where acceleration is just normal as opposed to quick. It's more than adequate for anybody's needs. Now there are drive modes which include comfort and eco and sport and whatnot, and there's a custom that lets you adjust how you want various levels like steering feel, throttle response, exterior engine noise and whatnot. I mean, Volkswagen usually has these drive modes and they usually allow a customizable one. So how do they perform? Well, Sport really does give far better throttle response and allows all the power available at any time and increases the regen braking. Now, I took a road trip on Eco, and I'll get to that in a second as to why. So Eco is all about saving the amount of energy used, and it reduces things like the accelerator response and the climate control and things like that. And on the freeway, even if I put the accelerator all the way to the floor, it only gives me so much power. And at certain speeds, it doesn't necessarily limit you, but you can feel the power getting reduced more and more as the car's saying, you're kind of using too much power, slow it down. Now, why was I using Eco? Well, I was on a bit of a road trip, and the range in the ID.Buzz is probably its weakest point. With a 91 kilowatt hour battery, that's 86 kilowatt hour net, for a vehicle this size, that's not a lot of storage. Officially, it's rated at 234 miles or 377 kilometers on a single charge for rear-wheel drive models, or if you're driving the 4Motion like I am, that drops to 231 miles or 372 kilometers. Now, as I said at the beginning, this is winter, and in fact, it's starting to snow. And I'll talk about snow driving in a little bit. But winter obviously reduces battery capabilities, just like it reduces the efficiency of a gasoline engine. In the Buzz, it's actually not too bad. On a full charge, I'm in the Canadian kilometers here, I went from the quoted 372 to getting up around anywhere from 330 to 345, which is a good amount for crossing cities and maybe seeing nearby relatives. But if you plan to do a multi-hour drive in a day, you need to plan out charge points, because in less than 3 hours, I can have this battery depleted. And that's sort of what happened on my drive. I put it in Eco, and it actually did save me enough, and I was fine. But for being a big family vehicle, regardless of whatever title you want to give it, it should be a bit of a road trip vehicle. And with this range, that's kind of hard to do without planning charging. Now, the good news is when it comes to charging, the Buzz is quite good. It can charge at 200 kilowatt max at a DC fast charger, which recharges this battery from 20 to 80 in well under half an hour. I don't currently have a stage 2 at home. I just have a regular old plug into the wall. But the onboard charger of the Buzz is so powerful. It was drawing a lot of power out of that outlet, and I was amazed to come back to the Buzz overnight after maybe 8 to 9 hours of charging, and I'd gained 13% back. Most EVs, when they plug them into the wall with similar sized batteries, I'm lucky to have 5 or 6%. So if you had a stage 2 at home and you didn't regularly need to go over 3 hours of driving, the Buzz would always be fully ready to go at any moment. So back to that winter driving. With 4Motion and winter tires, this thing is fully capable in the snow. In fact, it's actually surprisingly good, and some of that has to do with this long wheelbase. With the wheels tucked to the corners on the freeway like I am now, it's just so smooth. It takes no effort to keep it going straight, and it just eats up mile after mile, and it smooths out, even with winter tires, rough road surfaces. And when the snow does start to accumulate, its heavy weight and long wheelbase makes changing lanes through sort of slush ruts and truck ruts simple. There was no pull, there's no point where I felt like the vehicle was gonna start to get out of control or slide. It's just really reassuring. The downside though in winter weather has to do with sensors, specifically the one up front, that has a lot to do with adaptive cruise control, forward collision mitigation, lane keep, all those sort of things. So it's mounted really low in the bumper, and that's partially due to styling of the Buzz and also just the sheer size of the vehicle. The problem is, on the highway in slushy, snowy conditions, all the muck's getting thrown up onto it, and it took maybe 20-30 minutes of driving before I got a warning that all my safety systems were disabled that had to do with the things that I described, like forward collision and lane keep and all those sort of things. I mean, it still had ABS and it still drove fine. It was just all the active safety systems were disabled because it couldn't get an accurate reading. Now, the next day, I drove it on a sunny day like it's suddenly become because the snow's already stopped. And I still got that warning, and that's because I hadn't cleaned the sensor. So after cleaning it, everything was fine, and only once during the week did that happen again. And that time I didn't actually have to clean it myself, and it went away. Now, this isn't just a side effect of the Buzz, it's a side effect of any car, electric or gas, and I've had it happen before, but this sensor seems extra susceptible just in its placement. So back to actually driving the Buzz. Well, like I said, it tracks so straight on the road, and this high, wide open seating position with glass everywhere just gives great sight lines and a commanding view. It does feel like you're driving a mini bus. I mean, not in the sense of you're driving this big, unwieldy truck-like vehicle. You just sit up here with all your passengers behind and you feel in command of where you're going. Despite the wheels being pushed out to the corners, handling isn't exactly amazing, and it shouldn't be expected in this vehicle, but it corners well enough and it has a surprisingly small turning circle when you consider its wheelbase. Now, as smooth as I described the vehicle being on the highway and even in city streets on rough surfaces, it isn't so good when it comes to broken pavement and other bumps in the road. Now, it absorbs them well enough, but you can audibly hear it kind of crash over these surfaces. And when you get on some really rough, frost-heaved, broken side roads, then you start to feel and hear it. Now, I know there's a delicate balance the engineers have to walk when trying to spring and dampen this between the vehicle's weight and ride comfort and handling. I just hope maybe down the road there'll be a few little tweaks just to refine it a bit, because honestly, that's the only negative when it comes to drivability. This is just a really good vehicle to get behind the wheel and drive. It's not a performance vehicle, but it's not meant to be. It's meant to be something that just hauls a lot of people or a lot of gear easily, and that's what it does. And it feels more refined than a lot of big SUVs or other minivans, and that's partially due to its all-electric architecture and also due to just the platform it's built on. I feel like I'm in something more premium than just, say, an Odyssey or a Sienna or even an Atlas. And for the price, it better. But we'll get to that a little bit later. I still am not quite ready to let you know how much this costs. Okay, so maybe I lied. There's one more little nuance about the way the Buzz drives, and I'm not a huge fan of, and that has to do with braking. It's weird. Sometimes it feels like you press the brake pedal and there's like almost a dead zone where there's no bite and no real reaction, and then all of a sudden it comes on real hard and real fast. It takes a while to learn to modulate, but it's not always linear depending on speeds, and after 2 weeks I've pretty much perfected it. But when Kyle first drove it, he had the same impression, and it's just one of those things that you have to get used to if you buy the vehicle. So I guess the best way to sum up the driving experience is this. I am someone who loves sporty vehicles. I like the noise of a great engine, manual transmissions, rear-wheel drive or performance, all-wheel drive, all those great things. But if I need to drive a family vehicle, especially a big family vehicle, this is what I want to drive. This is it. My results may be a little skewed compared to others, but this is the most mundane, under-the-radar two-tone color with the gray and the white. I mean, solid gray would be a little less obvious. If I had blue, yellow, or green, I'd probably be causing accidents with the amount of heads turning. But sitting in my driveway, every neighbor that's walked by wanted to know something about it. How it drove, if it's worth the money, what's it like inside, all sorts of things. And then others wanted some tech numbers, but it created a lot of conversation. And when we went places that were populated, like malls, Niagara Falls, and other things that end in alls, I would leave the vehicle and people would be checking it out. I would come back to the vehicle and people would be checking it out. I would be driving in and out of these densely congested areas, and you guessed it, people would be checking it out. The best thing for Volkswagen is no one can really copy this style either, because it's a true reflection to their heritage, and anyone who copies it, it would be so obvious because no one else had a bus back in the day quite like this. Okay, time to talk price. The ID.Buzz is only available initially as the first edition, and that's a fully loaded version, of course, with some exclusive extras. So in the US, for rear-wheel drive models, it starts at just over $67,000, including destination charges, and in Canada, it's nearly $80,000. Go to the 4Motion, and in the US, you are now over $71,000, and in Canada, you are over $86,000. Again, these all include destination charges. So there is a price to pay for the Buzz, and It is a lot of vehicle, and like I said, I really enjoy driving. In fact, it's easily one of my top vehicles of the year to operate. But the question is going to be, is the limited range worth the money? And inside, some people may really hone in on quality of materials for the money, because you're talking some serious luxury machinery at that price. And I personally like the interior. Like, it's not the highest of qualities or the richest of materials like maybe some Mercedes and BMWs, but it's really pleasing to the eye, and there's nice contrast and a cool use of different materials. And I'm fine with the interior for the price. I'm fine with everything for the price, except for the range is a bit low, because I do feel buyers would want this to maybe go a little further. So after 2 weeks of driving the bus, there's a couple things I can conclude. First, the ID.Buzz is not perfect. There are a couple issues, most notably the range. But I can also definitely conclude that this is one of the most enjoyable vehicles I've had all year. Now, a lot of people are going to complain that the range is too low and the price is too high, and I totally get it and agree to a sense. But for me, currently how it is, this would suit 99% of what I do in a year, and for that other 1%, my family owns a small SUV. So I guess that puts me in the demographic, but still, electric vehicle pricing as a whole still needs to come down before I'm ready to make the leap. But if or when that does, this is something that'll definitely be on the short list.